This video is brought to you by Skillshare. Click the link below to get 2 months of free tutorials on almost any creative, business, or tech subject you can think of. I've always seen music as a vibrant form of cultural history. The best music from the 2010s will live on long into the future. Sure, books and documentaries can lay down the facts, but music will tell future generations of our political issues, our worries, our passions, and our successes, all from the perspective of real people in the moment. I can bump Fleetwood Mac and Pink Floyd all day, but would I wear their outfits? Would I want to drive their cars or watch their televisions? Probably not, because technology and lifestyle always move fast. Trends come and go, but music is forever. And if you asked me what defined music and pop culture in the last 10 years, I would have to say trap music. While other genres like K-pop and Latin pop have also grown massively in the last few years, trap music and its sonic footprint have become so ubiquitous, they now serve as the baseline template for music in general. Because while other rising genres like K-pop and Latin pop are incredibly popular, they pale in comparison to trap if you want to measure how they can serve as a form of history. From the rise of suicide worldwide, to the opioid crisis, to the increasing wealth disparity, trap music serves in many ways as the artistic epicenter for these issues. It's a vibrant, living record of our most private struggles as they interweave with broader societal patterns. And the genre's importance doesn't end there. Trap synths and 808 kick drums intermingle regularly with rock, indie, and international sounds. From the distortion and booming 808s Joji uses to create a melancholic mood in his R&B ballads, to Ariana Grande heavily lifting instrumental cues and flows from southern trap beats on her insanely successful album Sweetener, one thing is certain. Trap music has become mainstream. And not to freak you out, but corporations have started using it in their ads too. Which can only mean one thing. We have about 10 years until high school sophomores are going to be cringing at 30-year-olds wearing X merch, bumping Uzi from their car stereos, and complaining about how SoundCloud was better in 2017.
Not gonna say much. Shout out Jet Will. He gonna take over on the mic. Old ladies suck. Okay, boomer, okay, boomer, okay, boomer, okay.
In short, it's all going to be corny soon. But that's just how life goes. I'm sure Metallica is real important to boomers for some reason. All of us who grew up and came of age in the 2010s have artists that we're going to keep listening to for the rest of our lives. Maybe you'll always love Tame Impala because they helped you get over a relationship, or Flying Lotus because of how he introduced you to the world of jazz. Maybe you're one of those people who's always going to listen to Shawn Mendes because, I don't know man, not everyone can have a personality. Either way, I know one thing for sure. When we look back in 5, 10, 20 years, there's going to be a lot to talk about. No matter what scene you are a part of, you're going to have memories. Memories not just of music or concerts or parties, but of how this era of music weaved in and out of our inner lives just as much it did our outer lives, in times of darkness and light. And in my opinion, no genre or scene has characterized that better than trap. The last 10 years of trap music have been about the melting of individual genres that have long held power in the music industry, and mixing them together in a soup of inspiration and creativity. It's been about telling stories that have never been told before in popular music, with a sense of deep emotionality that's long been taboo. It was about changing the status quo and destroying the corporate music industry. And finally, like I said, it's a living history of our culture and our consciousness. It's a record of our happiness and success, yes, but also our sadness and our pain, our struggles, our trends, our ideals of beauty, fashion, music, and style. That's why I think the 2010s will forever be remembered as bittersweet. When we look back on this decade in the future, we're going to see countless artists who found ways to escape their surroundings and make something from nothing. All while the biggest hurdle they faced on their journeys was themselves. And they lost that battle far too often. But they weren't alone in their ivory towers. They were a reflection of their generation. They were the youth. I want to tell you a story. It's the story that's going to define this decade for the rest of my life. It's the most beautiful and the most painful thing I've ever experienced. It validated my darkest fears and it inspired me to change the world. Because trap music didn't invent us, we invented it. The ideals of trap music, money, sex, violence, and drugs, these are reactions to trauma. They're not channels through which to heal. They're dangerous coping mechanisms, and I learned that the hard way. This is my experience in the 2010s. Jeremiah and I moved in together about 6 months ago. I met him back in 2017 in a group chat with Jay Schlatt and Mr. Amazing, but we didn't talk that much. I just kind of knew him as a guy who made good music. I liked his songs and I thought he was pretty smart, so when I heard he was traveling north to Philly for the summer, I knew I had to meet him. We spent a week together making music videos, taking photos, and hanging out with our mutual friends that live there. Above all, though, Jeremiah and I grew closer during the long car rides to and from different filming locations. It turned out we had a lot in common, and I was sad to leave because it's not too often you can make friends like that. A month later, a room was suddenly available in the apartment that I shared with my friend Sabir. The same week our extra room became available, I caught wind that Jeremiah needed a place to live because the job market in Philly was pretty slow, so naturally I offered him a place to stay. Now, I'd only met him once, so I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. But from what I knew about the guy, I liked him a lot, so I offered the room and he came up to Connecticut a few days later. Living with Jeremiah was one of the most important things I've ever done. Jeremiah is funny and smart and really good at making music. I don't want to say we did everything together, but we had so much fun that sometimes I didn't get all my work done. I was really happy to have a best friend that was kind and thoughtful. We live streamed together, we made content together, we visited New York City and Philly and everywhere in between. I showed him older music and he kept me up to date on the new stuff. And we were struggling too, but it was worth it. Money was tight, so we both got jobs cleaning up public schools after hours. We were janitors. I worked 4 hours every night in addition to the 8 hours I worked every day doing YouTube. I walked or biked to different schools every week, and sometimes it took up to an hour to get there. Sometimes I wouldn't eat dinner until after 10 p.m. But Jeremiah was always there for me. We realized over time that we had a lot in common, from an interest in religion to our taste in music, to our hobbies and passions. And we had both been raised in pretty stressful environments, so we related to each other strongly. It was our first time living on our own, too. The neighborhood was pretty rough, so we went out together late at night to get snacks or groceries, or go to the laundromat. I felt like I finally had a friend who understood me for who I was, rather than just seeing me as a resource to be taken advantage of, like so many people I meet. I'm reminded of a concept from the Japanese playwright Kuo Pao Kun, the cultural orphan. Kun defined the cultural orphan as someone suffering a sense of loss and alienation, and a kind of anxiety in the search for self. And that's exactly what that period in my life felt like. It was defined by the alien landscape of sudden adulthood, anxiety for the future, and trauma from the past. And I shared all of it with my best friend, Jeremiah. Despite all the fun Jeremiah and I had, it was often hard to tell what he was feeling. He makes music, and it's some pretty heavy stuff. He uses his creative outlet as a way to reconcile the darkest parts of his past and help deal with the trauma he's been through. But it was hard to tell where his artistic persona Grave Hours ended and where Jeremiah began. What really troubles him and what's just another form of self-expression? It was impossible to know. I loved talking about religion and family and meaning with him, but it wasn't always clear when he was being a person and when he was being an artist. And in the end, I think he didn't even know. In November, Jeremiah overdosed twice. The first time he tried to hide it from me, and I was so tired, overworked, and sick from my 2 jobs that it was pushed from my mind quickly. The next time didn't go unnoticed. A few friends had spent the weekend with us, and the same night they left to go back to Philly, Jeremiah gave himself alcohol poisoning. He was inches from taking his own life when I got home. I couldn't manage his symptoms alone, so after frantically debating for an hour on whether or not I should call an ambulance, I finally dialed 911. It was hard not because I didn't know what to do, but because I knew I would be changing both of our lives forever if I called. I knew he would be put in the psych ward and lose his job. I knew he would have to go home to the place he had run from for so long. The decision was paralyzing, but I was scared for his life in that immediate moment, and survival defeats all reason. Jeremiah was in the hospital for 12 days. His previous roommate Anthony came up from Philly to stay with me while we tried to make sure Jeremiah was receiving the proper care. We were confronted with the choice to either publicize Jeremiah's hospitalization or keep it private. And in the end, we settled on trying our hardest to make sure that no one on social media found out about what was going on. We didn't want to contribute to the endless loop of tragedy breeding tragedy. We didn't want to let people think that suicide and depression are part of the modern artistic process, or that there's some tragic romantic glory to be found in the psych ward. That's how these problems perpetuate themselves in the first place. We weren't proud of what happened. We were devastated. We felt guilty. We cried in the hospital with Jeremiah. I cried in the car. I could barely get out of bed most days. Since Jeremiah got out of the hospital, I've started my life over. I spent most of my savings to get us out of our lease and to help Jeremiah get back to his family in Florida. I had to push tons of videos back, including some secret projects I've been working on with Nebula. I'm tired, I'm stressed, and I'm living in a tiny room in the back of my mom's apartment. I'm struggling with concentration. I have nightmares and anxiety attacks, and I cry when I hear Jeremiah's music. I don't understand what happened or why. It's painful, and I miss my best friend. I wish he didn't have to see suicide as an option. It's just not easy to accept this reality. This reality of shame, trauma, and sadness, it's not an easy story to tell. I wish I did more. I feel like I failed as his friend. It's really easy to look at everything that's happened in the last few months and only see darkness. It doesn't help that an uncle of mine who relied on drugs for much of his life went missing 3 months ago and was never found. But I'm trying to find a way to push forward and keep telling stories, because I want to honor what makes Jeremiah my best friend. I want to highlight his artistic ability and try in some way or another to inspire people like him. People who have incredible potential but just can't quite seem to see it. There are so many bright minds who are plagued by darkness. It feels almost overpowering that in the end, many of our generation's most talented artists lost their inner battle. I didn't understand what that meant, though. I had no concept of how many people could be affected by one suicide attempt. I didn't understand the full range of emotion I would experience while nearly losing my best friend to an illness that we all kind of see as an abstract boogeyman in the shadows. But my experience with Jeremiah was deeply personal. One of the most personal things I've ever experienced. It's not an easy story to tell or to think about, but in that darkest hour I gained a new understanding of my own generation as a whole. Because the generation that created SoundCloud Rap has been in many ways defined not by its victories but by its tragedies, and how those tragedies represent our big picture societal issues. It's not worth one death, let alone hundreds of thousands. The number of overdose deaths in the US has been rising steadily for the last 20 years, reaching its peak in 2017 with over 72,000 people dying from drug use. In the last 2 years, the issue has more or less plateaued, with 68,000 drug deaths occurring in 2018. But trap music doesn't cause drug deaths, it reflects them. Art isn't a driving factor in our actions, it's a form of catharsis, an emotional outlet. As overdose deaths rise among young people, so does music about that issue. Throw in the temptations of fame and what that can do to young minds, and you have a recipe for disaster. Lil Peep, XXX, Mac Miller, Juice WRLD, 6ix9ine. These are our generation's icons in that they symbolize our struggles and our shortcomings. The idea that no matter how popular or intelligent or talented you are, addiction and violence and greed can take it all away. Even Lil Xan went to rehab in 2018 after a long struggle with drug abuse. His reputation and his career never recovered. In the end, it felt like the latter half of the last decade wasn't necessarily defined as much by specific works of music as it was by musicians and their personas. I spend a lot of time wondering how I got to this point in my life. It's hard to say, but I think it's to do with a lack of role models. I never saw a lot of things that many successful people see. I saw a lot of hurt, pain, instability, and sadness. And no one ever told me that wasn't normal. But all I want is to turn that negativity into something beautiful. I want to share my story, my small-scale story, on my large-scale platform. I want to think globally and act locally. I want to make videos that make you feel and think and understand better how the world exists inside of you and how you exist inside of it. This is a change that has been coming for a while, as my interest in hip-hop has been branching out into an interest in urban planning, public health, criminal justice, and other related topics. Now, that's not going to say I'm going to turn into an annoying activist, and I definitely won't blame you for unsubscribing if I do, but I want my videos to offer more journalistic value than they have before. I've done so much with my YouTube channel. I've been to so many places. I've met so many people. It's an experience that I never could have had anywhere else. But my path hasn't exactly led me to happiness. It's led me more toward confusion and loneliness. Because the world of being a public figure rewards self-harm and suffering, not peace and self-acceptance. But it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to be stuck in the infinite loop of lying to ourselves and covering the wounds with cheap thrills and unhealthy habits. But the decade wasn't all bad, and I think it's important to recognize that too. There were so many legendary moments of musical expression, from Travis Scott's Rodeo to Tyler's Flower Boy and Frank Ocean's Blonde. Human rights and equality are finally improving around the world, and sure, things might look a little dark, but I've never felt like I'm running out of hope to keep working towards a better future. And I certainly don't feel alone. In short, life is getting better. But like most things worth having, it's going to take a while, and it's not going to be easy. Our art is a reflection of our deepest fears and our weakest moments. There is a constantly blurred and ever-changing line between catharsis and self-harm, truth and fiction. Jeremiah and Grave Hours, Philip and Volksgeist. We are our art. Albums and songs and mixtapes have all become less important over the last 10 years. The art and the commodity is the artist himself. And if the artist isn't healthy, he can't help his audience on their path to freedom. We'll forever be stuck flying too close to the sun or falling into the sea. Liberation will be so far out of reach, it won't even feel like a realistic goal. Because this isn't a normal number. I think one of the biggest things that inspires me to keep going is watching YouTube videos of SoundCloud rappers performing. Their sense of life, the essence of who they were in the peak of that scene, was so energetic it's hard to imagine their inner pain. Because at our peaks we are limitless, and in our valleys we are nothing. But the truth doesn't lie firmly on either side, because human nature, despite its colorful beauty, is messy. It's prone to failures and misunderstandings. We can only hope to resist our chaotic and unstable desires in the search for freedom. This has been Volksgeist. Thank you for watching. If you want to pursue creativity and make 2020 a year to remember by developing new skills and deepening your existing passions, I highly recommend looking into Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community where membership provides an incredible level of value to each and every member. I personally use Skillshare nearly every day to sharpen up my graphic design and animation skills. It's a very useful platform that can help you improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and pursue what you're interested in. I personally want to recommend Abby Lossing's Creating Layered GIFs for Photoshop and After Effects class. But they have a number of different classes available, whether you're interested in hip-hop production, motion graphics, or any other creative discipline under the sun. Skillshare is also incredibly affordable. An annual subscription is less than $10 a month, and you can get started for free for 2 months at the link in the description. That's skl.sh/Volksgeist18.